Okay, we're going to start. I have 3 of you on Zoom. No one is in the classroom. So we're going to start with the homework assignment. I won't go through the questions. I'll just go through what the answers ought to be. So if you don't hear an answer, you can interrupt me and I'll repeat the answer. Okay. So so this is homework number 2, section 1. Question 1, true and false. Question 1, the answer is A. Question 2, the answer is B. Question 3, the answer is A. So again, section 1, true or false. Question 1 is A. Question 2 is B. Question 3 is A. Section 2, multiple choice. Question 1 is E as in elephant. Question number 2 is also E as in elephant. Question 3 is D as in dog. So that's section 2, multiple choice. Question number 1 is E. 2 is E. 3 is D. And then finally, section 3, fill in the blank. Question number 1 is origination. Number 2 is administration. 3 is origination. 4 is administration. So again, section 3, question 1 is origination. 2 is administration. 3 is origination. 4 is administration. Any questions on that? No questions on that?
No, sir.
Okay. So
No questions.
No questions. Okay, great stuff. So last class we kind of continue to work on ability, pretty much wrapping that up. We looked at so the 2 classes last week. We talked about ability being probably the most important component of credit assessment, next to character. So character 1, ability is arguably number 2. And I remember I said I made the saying that, or not made the saying, but I quoted the old saying, only cash buys loans. It says, if it is clear that the client cannot pay, then the decision should be made to decline the loan. We looked at the debt service ratios. We looked at the consumer debt service ratio, the gross debt service ratio, the total debt service ratio. And we look at the formula for calculating those, and the 2 that we focused on was the gross debt service ratio, which is the housing debt service ratio, and the total debt service, TDSR, which is the overall, that includes consumer debt, housing debt, consumer debt and housing debt. And the 2 of those equal the total debt. We did some examples. We did 3 exercises in class. We also looked at another exercise, and we kind of ended with doing the spreadsheet, the income spreadsheet for Martin and Sherry rule. And so we completed those 3 columns as applicable on the spreadsheet, and we calculated the total debt service ratio, which is the only one that we're going to be looking at going forward. The only ratio we're really looking total debt service ratio in these calculations going forward. So any questions on what we covered last week before we move to today's lesson? Maybe start on margin.
No, so just a quick question though. We'll be going through the homework assignment from last week. When will we be going through that?
We'll be going through that. Well, I have to grade those, so we normally go through those on Thursdays.
Okay.
Okay. We're just going through this one today because I forgot to do it last week. Okay, so margin is the bank's profit potential, and we're looking at the bottom of page 35. Excuse me a minute, please. Let me just take a note of those who are on the attendance sheet. Let me just write down the names. Okay. All right. Okay, so the margin is the bank's profit potential. There are 2 elements of this that we look at. Someone's just joining, so. Okay, so the bottom of page 35, we begin looking at margin today. And we see the margin is the bank's profit potential. And in your book, it mentions that this is usually set by executive management based on certain criteria. So margin covers basically 2 areas, and because these 2 areas are where the bank would make money. Okay, so if margin is the bank's profit potential, you're looking at the areas where the bank makes money, or the bulk of its money on loans. So the first is the interest rate, of course, and that rate is priced to reflect the risk. And then there are fees. And the question to ask yourself is, are those fees in line with the product granted? Regarding interest rate, you want to ask the question, is it priced to reflect the risk? Okay. So we'll talk a little bit about both of those in a few moments. So interest rate, is it priced to reflect the risk? Fees, is it or are they in line with the product granted? So the interest rate, of course, is the rate of interest that we charge directly for the use of that facility. So for overdraft account, for a loan account, whether it's a personal loan or a business loan or mortgage loan, for credit cards, those will attract certain interest rate free interest rate charges. Then fees will be normally most of them are one-time fee for setting up the facility, and some of those are also annual fees. So you'll have like your credit cards, your overdrafts. Those are charged fees annually, renewal fees annually. Business loans are renewed annually. They get their annual fees charged with them. But normally for personal loans to individuals, the fees are normally like a one time, with the exception of those credit cards and overdrafts. So, for example, if someone's getting a personal loan, there'll be a commitment fee or facility fee, 1%, 1.5%, 2%, 2.5%, depending on whatever your financial institution charges. If it's a mortgage loan, again, the interest rate, the fee, facility fee or commitment fee would be a certain amount. Okay, anywhere from 1%, possibly up to 3%. Then there's some other fees, but those are minor. So like late fee charges and that type of thing, and occasional for people who will overdraw their accounts without a standardized or an established overdraft facility. You would charge those people fees for going occasionally overdrawn, but those are not the major fees where banks make a lot of their money. The bulk of the money comes from interest as far as loans are concerned, because they also on savings accounts and checking accounts, the bank also makes fees on a monthly basis for the use of accounts. So, but we're not talking about those. We're talking about fees that are associated with loans in this instance. Okay. So let's look at the first one, interest rate. Okay. And we have several fill in the blanks. So the first one, overdrafts. These are usually charged a margin over prime. Usually charged a margin over prime. Now, before you get confused and you say, well, if we are saying that margin is the bank's...
Hi, Mr. Knowledge.
Sorry, go ahead.
Just wanted to confirm which page you're on, please.
Yeah, page 35.
What page are you on, please?
Page 35.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sure. So if we're saying that margin in Campari is the bank's profit potential, then how we're saying usually charge a margin over prime. Okay, it's just the use of the same word differently. Okay, so in Campari, there is only one I, right? So instead of saying using that I for interest rate, we use that I as you have read for insurance. Okay, so or profit or profit margin, saying P for profit margin. We've used that for purpose. Okay, so the word margin, another word for margin is a spread, right? Is a spread. So what that means is that, remember we talked about the prime or the base interest rate charged by the central bank and the lending prime rates. So when the bank has a base rate, okay, and that's currently 4.25. So when if you are charging, let's say for example, you're charging 10.25 for a loan, okay, 4.25 minus or subtracted from 10.25 is 6%, right? So that's 6% is your spread or your margin. Okay, the difference between the base and the actual interest rates charged is your spread or your margin. Okay, and so that is probably one of the reasons why they referred use the M for margin. Okay, so just remember that margin refers to the bank's what you call it, the bank's profit potential. Okay, and interest rate is, the interest is by far the largest contribution to that, or contributor to that. Okay, so you have margin being used in this case is a margin or a spread, or if you want to use the word, it's all the gravy. Okay, so the gravy, the spread, the margin in the example I gave you would be 6%. Okay, so it's usually charged a margin, or some people call it points. Okay, a number of points over prime. Okay, so if you say 600 points or whatever it is, you know, that's 6 percentage points. Okay. With personal loans, excuse me, we're on page 35. With personal loans, it's usually a variable rate tied to prime. Okay. What that means is that should the prime rate go up or should the prime rate go down, the you'll see that the interest rate charged on a personal loan or consumer loan or business loan will move to correspond with that. So if the prime rate goes up to 5%, okay, which is 0.75 more than it is now. So if it goes from 4.25 to 5%, right? That's an increase of 0.75. You'll find that the interest rate will go up correspondingly. Now, it might not happen the same month, because there tends to be a lag, and it varies from bank to bank. Some banks will correct it within, depending on when the central bank announces it. If they announce it early, some banks may be able to put it in before the end of the month. But normally it'll be the following month, or within that first quarter. So for example, if you may recall, when we were talking about how the central bank rate, prime rate changed, the rate that the central bank lends to banks, it went to 4%. So it went down from 4.25 to 4%. And that was in December, I think December 2016, but it didn't take effect until January of 2017. Most banks didn't put it into effect until January 2017. Okay, so sometimes there is a delay, and that's because banks have to, well, one, you have to notify your customers. Okay, so you have to notify your customers, and then you have to make the adjustments in your system. Okay, so with overdrafts, it's usually charged a margin or a spread over prime. With personal loans, consumer loans, business loans, is usually a variable rate tied to the prime rate. And with mortgage loans, it's usually a fixed, and I use that word loosely, rate tied to prime. And the reason for that is that mortgage loans are mortgage loans are long-term. And so you really don't want there being too much fluctuation, and the payment amounts tend to be higher. So any large changes in that interest rate, particularly those going up, could have a negative impact on the client. Okay, so you may see that the notice period for mortgages may be 3 months. Okay, so they may let the customer know in 3 months' time or 2 months' time, the interest rate will go up or it'll go down. Okay, and the rate can go up or go down. Okay. Any questions on that? No? Okay. So those are the three main types of accounts: overdrafts, personal loans, mortgage loans, and those are the blanks to complete. Overdrafts usually charge a margin over prime. Personal loans usually variable rate tied to prime, and mortgage loans usually a fixed rate time tied to prime. Okay, so the fees. We've looked at the interest rate. Let's look at the fees, which is the second largest contributor to the bank's profit potential. So point number 2 at the bottom of page 35. The question you want to ask is, are the fees in line with the product being granted? Are the fees in line with the product being granted? Now, the considerations are that you will have to look at the type of product, the complexity of the product. Okay. So, for example, as on the screen, it says a construction mortgage may carry a higher fee level than a residential purchase mortgage. Why do you think a construction mortgage would carry a higher fee level than a regular mortgage? Okay, because of the risk.
Higher risk,
Okay, why is it higher risk?
because as opposed to having a already completed security, you constructing a security, whereas something may go bad, things tend to go bad, so it's more risk for the bank.
Yes, okay. And so you charge the fee based on the risk, and you also well, the type of product and or the complexity of administration work required. How does a mortgage loan in terms of complexity of work required differ from that of a regular mortgage? Say you have someone buying a house, a ready-built house, someone coming to you for mortgage, for construction mortgage to build a house. Yes. Those of you who are online, did you hear that answer?
No, so you could repeat it for me, please.
Okay. Say it again a little louder. Let's see if they hear you.
Because the funds have to be released in stages to ensure that the loan is being completed.
Did you hear it?
The last part of it we heard.
Yeah,
Okay.
I heard it.
All right. Okay, so the answer being put forth is that because the loan has to be paid in stages, in order to ensure that the property is that the house is being completed as per the contract. Okay, so whereas with a purchase, you basically pay out the money on one time. Okay, so you get you get the sales agreement, you get the appraisal, the lawyers finish all of the legal work, they come back, there's good title to the property, and so you're ready to pay out the money, And so you normally would issue basically one check to pay normally to the law firm. So the law firm in that you have a covering letter. It states what portion of that is for legal fees, what portion of that is to pay the vendor. That's the person who's selling the property, and it's normally a one-time payout. Even if you do two checks, one for the fees and one for the purchase price of the property, or the balance of the purchase price of the property, is a one-time payout, generally speaking. Okay, whereas with a construction loan, you're gonna have to be referring to that every time the customer requests a drawdown for funds. When they complete the foundation, they block it up, they go to bell course, they go to roof, they go to windows and doors, completion, and then few months later, you have retention. So over a period of 6 to 12 months, you'll be dealing with that. You'll be handling that file 5 or so times, four, at least a minimum of 4 times, right? 4 more times. Okay. So because you could be handling that, you tend to charge the customer more. So for regular mortgage, let's say you charge the customer 1%. Okay. For construction mortgage, maybe you want to charge them 2.5 or 3%. Okay. And although the other, you know, the client is, the loan officer is, or the different people in the bank are being paid to do their various jobs on an ongoing, on a daily basis, right? This is one way of helping to meet that payroll. Okay, by charging the customer an extra fee for keep handling that, because when the person comes to the loan officer to make their request, once everything is in order, they review the request and make sure everything is in order, including that the inspector for the project has approved, has sent in his or her approval for a project, and whatever else is required. Then you send that to administration, right? Administration got to review that. If they deem everything is in order, then the administration manager then gives it to one of their people who will now do the financial entries to process the money by drawing that amount of money down from the loan. And depending on how your financial institution is set up, your loan administration department either cut the check and send it out, or they will give you authorization to cut the check in the branch and send the check out, right? So so you see, there's more than just one person handling it at each stage of the game. Okay. So you also want to make sure that you don't overcharge the customer. So you'll find that financial institutions will compare to see what the other banks are charging. So for example, Bank A wouldn't want to charge 5%, do a 5% fee on, say, a construction loan, when everybody else may be doing 2.5%, 3%. Okay, because then you are making yourself less competitive in the market. Now, if you have some other benefits, for example, you may have a lower interest rate on the mortgage, and so that attracts people to your bank. Then you can say, okay, well, they charge 2.5, I'll charge 3. Okay, so you kind of compensate by charging a higher fee. And so when people look at that, they say, well, that's just a one-time fee, right? As opposed to the interest rate. They will still come to your bank because you have overall a competitive advantage. So while the fee may not be competitive, overall, when all things are considered, your product is more competitive. Okay, so you don't want to have the highest interest fees, the highest interest rates and the highest fees, right? in the market. Unless, of course, you really are focusing on a certain group of people and you want to keep somebody out. Okay. But by and large, all the financial institutions that all of you work for, they are very much, pretty much competitive. Okay. And so they're not going to be exclusive one way or the other. They're going to make sure that they have the most competitive product. Okay. So, so how exactly do you determine how to price the interest rate, price your fees, et cetera, et cetera? Okay. But there are two things that I wanted to look at. And one of these we'll be looking at in a little bit more detail in chapter 8. We get to chapter 8. But the first one is TLC. You know, like tender loving care. Okay. TLC. And the other one is PACT. PACT. Okay. Now, let's look at TLC first. What does that involve? Okay. So TLC is, we look at TLC is when you're looking at the overall product risk. Okay. TLC relates to the product risk. Okay. So the first risk involved is the type of loan risk. Okay. Whether that's a consumer loan, a credit card, a mortgage, overdraft. Okay. What is the risk, or what are the risks associated with a particular loan type or loan facility type, credit type? Okay. So you want to consider those when you are pricing your product. Okay. So if we just take two, for example, let's look at consumer loans versus mortgage loans. Okay. Consumer loans are deemed to be more risky because they tend to be, for the most part, unsecured, or the security being used for them is not as good or sound as the security being used for a mortgage. Okay. With a mortgage, you're using real estate, whether it's undeveloped land or developed land. Okay. And you can always find the land. Okay. The land ain't going nowhere. Okay. Whereas on the consumer, even if you take, say, a car, okay, that car could disappear and end up in another family island, okay, or be dismantled for parts, and the shell ship out the country scrap metal. Okay. Okay, so that's the type of loan risk. So and then so two, when you consider credit cards tend to have a high interest rate even than consumer loans, because for the most part those are unsecured. So you'll find you'll find consumer loans, depending on what the purpose is. So like new cars, you probably get, you know, your 7% and those kind of things, right? So between 7% and I would say 15. Anybody have their consumer loans higher than 15%? Anybody? Depends on the company. Okay, so what? Okay, so for your bank, it depends on the employer, who the borrower is employed with. So, do you know what the highest interest rate you charge on? 16? Okay, so so right now it's on the table. 16% is the highest. Okay, whereas credit cards, that's 18% annually. Your credit card is between 16, again, depending on who the customer is. What you have different type products?
Yeah, I think the different products and then if you bring it over a credit card balance from another institution, it'd be 40%.
Okay, okay. So those are kind of like incentives to get.
Yeah.
Yeah, but generally speaking, you'll find the average credit card, the charge is 18%. Okay, even if it's 16%, or 14%, those are still higher generally than than a lot of the consumer loans. You sorry? Because of the risk. Sorry? Yes, you see, for the most part, credit cards are totally unsecured. You may have a few that are secured. And if they're secured, let's say by cash, then you'll find the interest rate may go down. Okay? Oh, wow. Okay. All right, you don't have any money. See, whether they put money or not. But generally speaking, okay. Okay, that's okay. So your bank has see your bank has made a determination that with its product line, that is what it's gonna do, right? It's if you get a cash secured loan, consumer loan, and you get a credit card with that, the interest rate will um be a little less. Okay. And that's one of those things that I talked about being competitive, right? You make the money one way, you may lose the money one way, but you make the money up somewhere else. Okay. And with your bank, y'all are normally consumer loan driven, right? More consumer loan driven. So so that's where their thrust is, consumer lending, not as much on the mortgage side. Okay. So so their interest rates will tend to be, for the consumer loans, even cash secured, tend to be higher because their portfolio is riskier. So would you have a financial institution that have a strong real estate based portfolio, right? Whether that's business loans secured by real estate or business mortgage loans, or even individual personal residential mortgages, right, secured by real estate, you'll find that they tend to have lower or afford, well, to offer, I should say, some lower end interest rates. Okay, so so periodically you'll see some of them, they'll be advertising they're doing this the 7% or whatever it is, 8 or whatever percent on a consumer loan, say for new cars. Okay, and again, that's because the new car is less risky than a used car. You see, or no collateral security at all. Okay, and for new cars, the insurance companies will give you comprehensive insurance, whereas a used car, generally, unless you ask and then you jump through hoops with them and they examine the car, whatever it is, the insurance company will just give you third party fire and theft, right? So again, it goes to the type of loan risk. Okay, so the type of product, how that product is put together. So the more risky it is, the higher the interest rate. The less risky, the interest rates tend to be lower. Okay, so that is the first point, type of loan risk. The second one is liquidity risk. Okay, and this has to do with how quickly. Well, this has several aspects, but the main aspect relates to being able to get your money back. Okay, so that is tied to basically your collateral. Okay, so how liquid is this? How liquid is this loan? Can I get my money back on a short in a short space of time? So if I am holding stocks, bonds, and shares as opposed to I'm not holding anything at all, the interest rate will tend to be lower if I'm holding something because I can grab onto it. What should also happen, but I don't think it does, is that if the person also has a very strong net worth, that should count for something. But in our society, it doesn't count. Okay, so for example, let's say that I have $350,000 net worth, and most of that I have some of that, say 250,000 that is in real estate, and the other 150, so the other 100,000 is in stocks, shares, cash accounts. Okay, whether that's with the financial institution I'm borrowing from or not. Okay, when they look at my net worth, right? This is a person who saves, who invests, and they have assets, and their assets have a high net worth. So it just isn't just simply a positive net worth. It's a relatively high net worth person. Okay, and so when you're looking at that, and again, based on the person's age, how long they've been working and whatnot, you get a picture of what that person has been doing with their money, and so you get a financial picture of the type of person you're dealing with. This isn't a person who spends their money willy-nilly. Okay, that type of person should be given a low interest rate, but it doesn't happen in our. Okay, so that is one thing that is factored in, or should be factored in liquidity risk. Okay, but in our situation here in the Bahamas, it has more to do with the collateral security itself being liquid. Okay, or being available. First of all, are there any available? If it's available, how liquid is it? Okay, how long is it going to take me to liquidate that to get my money out, my money back? Okay, because I am a lending institution and I make my money on lending. So if this is going bad, I need to get out of that quickly so I could lend that $10,000 to somebody else who could pay me. Okay, so that takes away $10,000 that I can lend to somebody else. Okay, I don't want that tied up, and I have to go through the court and all this and take 2 or 3 years to get my money back. Or the court come back, they go to the court and they say, well, I can only pay back $10 a month. Okay, on a $10,000 debt. I don't think so. Okay, you'll be there until you're grandchildren ready to graduate from college, paying that off. You know what I'm saying? Okay, and you're a loan officer, you would have retired yourself. You'll probably be in Dubai vacationing. Right? So so you know, so that is very important. Okay. It will not necessarily that they have it, right? But you begin to form a picture of that person. Okay, so someone who's been working, 10 years, and they have a pretty good portfolio investing, whether it's with Colina or Royal Fidelity or one of the other investment houses, right? They have mutual funds, whatever it is, they have stock shares, they Bahamas government registered stock. They have stocks and shares in Colina, Port Authority, et cetera, wherever it is, right? And then they also have good cash apart from that, right? And then they have a little bit of real estate. then you look at that person in a different light. Or they may not have real estate when they come to you, but the purpose they're getting it for may be to acquire real estate. Okay, and then they may say, I just don't want a house. I want a duplex, a triplex, or a condominium complex, right? Or they may want it for business. So they'll continue renting until they get their business off the ground. Then when they get their business off the ground, then they look for a place. Okay, because they figure, okay, well, if I can end up paying $1,500 for mortgage, okay, and I paying $1,000 now for rent, okay, but my business loan is going to be, say $1,500 a month, the same as my mortgage, right? You may take the route, well, if I get the house mortgage, it may take me longer to do the business. Like if you putting all this money into the house mortgage as opposed to business. Whereas if I put it in the business and the business does well, okay, on an annual basis, I can end up netting, $40,000-$50,000, okay, and I still pay myself sufficient to meet my monthly expenses. But when I do my when I look at my return earnings and what I put allowing to go back in the business, it shows that, hey, man, I can afford now a mortgage at $3,000 a month. Okay, so when you see a person like that comes to you, and they're saying, this is the reason I so they'll be asking you questions. They'll say, so if I get a residential mortgage, what would it be? Then I say, okay, well, and if you do offer business loans, if I want to do a business, or they may want to pledge the property, right? They may have an undeveloped property, right? Or they may have a house on the property, okay, and it's being rented out. I have a friend who he has 2 sets of the duplexes, right? And so he's getting about $200 more for them per month than what it's costing him to rent somewhere else. So he came out the unit that he was living in because he could get $200 more per month, and he rent from somebody else. Okay, yeah, because he making $200 more. Yeah, you see, so and in time, let's say he find and all his children, it's just him and his wife. Okay, so who knows? He may find someplace cheaper than that. A 1-bedroom. You don't need a 2-bedroom. Okay, so if he find a 1-bedroom, he can pay $850 or $900. Okay, and yeah, you see, so people will. There are a lot more people nowadays who are becoming financially savvy, and so they're going to be asking you those questions, and they're going to want to compare. You see, and again, when you're doing this for these people, think of yourself as well. Okay, do I want to continue working for Biff's Bank for all of my life, right? Or Mr. Norton's Bank all my life. Okay, so at some point in time, and some people have done it where they've retired from banking, but they've had businesses. Okay, I've known of one manager, in one of the banks that I worked at. He had condominiums over PI while he was still managing the bank. Okay, and when he retired, he retired with his bank pension, and his condominiums were paid for. Plus, he had another business or businesses. I know of at least one other business that he had that actually was not condominium. It was a retail business, right? That actually had a product, right? And so when he retired, he went and worked in his business. He had a manager capable. So 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, if he felt like it, he went home, went by his pool, sipping his martinis or his Campari, the drink Campari, right? So you can do both. You can do both. So that's liquidity risk. Okay. The third one, and the one that we're really concerned with, is customer risk. Okay. So TLC, type of loan risk, T. L, liquidity, sorry, and C, customer risk. Okay. So what is the customer risk? I'm glad you asked, and I'll explain it. Okay. Customer risk is where we now concentrate on and we get PACT, P-A-C-T. Okay. So, TLC is product risk. Okay, PACT has to deal with the client risk, right? Or the customer risk. Okay, so TLC is a product. From product, we get type, liquidity, customer. The last one, customer, is a risk. And from that, we take down deeper and we get PACT, P-A-C-T. Okay, what does PACT mean? Okay, P is purpose of the credit facility. A, age of the client or business. C is the collateral offered. T is the term of the facility. Okay. So the customer risk, the purpose of the credit facility. A, age. C, collateral. And T, term. Sorry? Term of the facility. Term of the facility. And if you if you want to reference this page 41 in your text, that's going into chapter 8. So chapter 8, we'll be looking at it a little bit more detail. So what is the purpose of the credit facility? So an individual borrowing. So let's say an individual borrowing for a residence. Let's say there's a mortgage. They're borrowing for a mortgage versus a person borrowing. Let's look at the consumer loan. Let's not the consumer loan. A person borrowing for a new car versus a person borrowing to start a new business. Which do you think is more risky? The person borrowing for business. Why is that? Why do you think for business? Okay. Any other? No collateral to back it up? Yes. Okay. And I think those are two of the major things that you'll probably come up with. And the first being the one that you mentioned, right? It is more risky. Okay, so so someone or an organization or borrowing for a car or house is less risky than someone borrowing for business or a group borrowing for business. So business loans tend to be more risky. Okay, and that is why you find that up until recently, most financial institutions did not do business loans. Now, as I mentioned in one of the previous classes, you have some financial institutions who have business lending units, and so they are specialized persons because you gotta be able to understand business plans and cash flows in business and have a little bit of accounting knowledge and understand projections. You also have to understand the type of business, right? Or have some general knowledge on how, or understanding of how business works. So you'll tend to find that the people who will probably go in those areas will be the more seasoned lenders or people with some accounting background or some economic background. Okay, if you have a novice lender there, they probably put there to begin the learning process, because you don't want to get someone, you don't want to have your you don't want to have your business unit, lending unit, supplied or being furnished or being run by a bunch of people getting ready to retire next 5-10 years. You're looking at continuity. So you want someone young in there. So you get, identify somebody between 25 and 35, because you want them to get their feet wet, even if they don't have any accounting knowledge. There may be someone in the bank that you identify who's a quick learner, or who has a hunger for the type of thing, wants to do the type of thing. And so you say, hey, we give you opportunity. And so they may do well in that department, right? So, but for the first going off, you'll find that manning those units tended to be people who were a little bit more experienced in lending and who had some previous business lending experience. And in some instances, you may not have to hire from outside and bring them in. But as things have developed, you find now that you could just have the people trained inside and then or hire someone younger who has some experience with business degree, whatever it is. They may not have the practical, okay. They may have the degree, but this is where it would be put into place. Or someone who may have worked an accounting firm and they examined various types of businesses, so that the extent to which they can add value to the company. So you bring them in. Okay. So but the point I'm making is that you'll find that consumer loans I jumped the gun there. Consumer loans, the interest rates on well, the risk, overall risk, because they're risky. Again, you're thinking in terms of, do I want a consumer loan portfolio? Do I want a mortgage loan portfolio? Do I want a business portfolio? Do I want a mix of that? Okay, so in determining what your customer base is going to look at, and this is done at a very high level. It is done at executive level, board level. Okay, and so this is pretty much predetermined, or they may revisit it, like in the case of your bank several years ago, when they determined they wanted to switch from having such a heavy mortgage portfolio, and they wanted to take on the giant consumer lender at that time, who was like 10 times their size. Okay, because that's where they can make the money. The mortgages, it's taking too long to get the mortgages on the books, because the lawyers, in their estimation, was taking too long. The interest rates, were low, between 8 and 10%. Whereas with a consumer loan, I could get them booked in a week or less. The interest rates are like double. Okay. Sorry, how many hours is that? 48 hours. Okay. And of course, you had to be that competitive because the people who you were going at after was doing it within 48 hours. Okay. So what customer are you focusing on? And also that takes me to another point, because you'll find that, and I mentioned this in the previous class, is that when you find the defense force and the police force people graduating, or what they call falling out, you find that some of us banks, we are there very, very quick to grab them because salary reduction, right? So again, that is a customer risk, because we can get salary reduction, right? Those are the people we want to target. Okay. And again, the purpose of the facility, these are consumer loans. We want to get them with these couple dollars in their pocket, right? Okay. So the purpose of the credit facility, the age of the client or business. Okay, what is your target market? Of course, someone who's getting ready to retire. Yeah. Yeah, but that's not going to be your major thrust. That's not going to be your major thrust. We have it. We have it. We have the gate open, but that's not where our main thrust is. Okay, so at the age of the business, so a business has been around a longer time. Okay, we tend to want to look at those because it means that chances are they are a going concern. They're making a profit, and they will continue to be a profit, right? So being have to massage them too much. Whereas, for example, a bank like, say, the Bahamas Development Bank, the whole point of Bahamas Development Bank is to help startup businesses in particular, as well as some existing ones who need additional capital. So their focus, their customer base, they go after the ones that us regular commercial banks won't go after. Okay, so it's the age of the business, the customer, again that kind of goes back to the purpose, right? What is the purpose? That the type of business, the age of the business. Okay, and then C, collateral offered. Okay, we have to consider the collateral offered. In most cases for consumer loans, there's no collateral offered, but as long as we can get salary reduction, be happy. And to a lesser extent, salary assignment. Okay. But if it's a very, very solid collateral, right, then we will we will like say good real estate, we will go after it. Okay? And even with that, you'll find, for example, even if you say you have a high net worth subdivision, like one of the more recent ones would have been like Treasure Cove, right? When Treasure Cove came, that was considered, high end. But then the bank that I was at the time, we had a policy, we did not do more than was it 1/3 or 50%? I had between 1/3 or 50% of, we wouldn't finance any more than 1/3 or 50% of that subdivision, even though it was very high end, okay, and very profitable. The reason for that is if a subdivision fails for some reason, right, then you have a bunch of mortgages. And this particular bank, we had learned our lesson because we went and we financed plenty, more than 50%, in Pinewood Gardens. And the early days of Pinewood Gardens, right? You know, the concrete roof and whatever it is. So when the flooding and the cracking roofs came, you know, we was, you know, we had a headache when it came to collections, okay? Because then it means those people then needed to come to try to do something to put parameters or dig wells, put parameters to keep the water out, build up, take off the concrete roofs, put on your standard roof with actual asphalt shingles or whatever it is, right? And we ended up having to extend those mortgages beyond their ability to repay in the normal lifestyle, not style, lifetime. Okay, so that would take them like age 65, 70 to pay off some of those mortgages because they had to have the roof. The piece of the roof is actually falling, you know, on people in their bed while they're sleeping. You see, because the type of structure was not for the Bahamas. You see, with those concrete roofs, the rain and the hot sun, because it contract and expand, and sorry. I don't think there are any left in Pinewood that still have the concrete roofs, right? But then you might be able to find some historical pictures, you know, and the flooding isn't as bad as it used to, particularly where they opened up and coming into Charles Saunders, okay? So it's and then of course, you know, Charles Saunders, they dug those trenches on either side, so you had runoff. Sorry? No, that's clay roofs. I'll see if I could contact someone who used to take pictures back in the olden days. Probably something like that. Now, bear in mind, I wear glasses, so I may not be able to see from this distance, right? Okay. So the customer or the client risk purpose of the credit facility, the age of the client or the business, the collateral being offered, and also the term of the facility. So the shorter the the shorter the facility, the interest rates tend to be higher, the longer it tend to be lower. The better the collateral security, the rates tend to be lower, as opposed to being higher. And also the purpose of the facility will also determine your term. So you wouldn't, for example, do a furniture loan over 30 years. Okay. Right. I mean, that's extreme, right? Okay. So again, purpose, age, collateral, and term. Okay. When you look at business loans and consumer loans versus mortgage loans, we find that business loans, consumer loans, the interest rates tend to be higher than mortgage loans. Okay. And as I said, we will look at that a little bit more when we get into actual pricing, chapter 8, pages 40, 41, and beyond. Now, I just want to say something here, because remember, when we were looking at the loan application, we talked about PAT, right? PAT. Okay. So don't confuse PAT with PAT. Okay. PAT has to do with the loan application request. Okay. Remember, PAT was purpose, amount, term. That's the request. What is the purpose the customer is borrowing for? What is the amount they want to borrow? How long they want to borrow it for, or they need to borrow it for? That's purpose, amount, term. That has to do with the loan application request. Okay. PACT, on the other hand, PACT, has to deal with the pricing of the product. Okay, which for most parts will be affect your interest rates and to some degree your fees. Okay, so just by way of revision, when we look at the client's request, PAT, T-A-T, remember we said there was demographics. Okay, that's all information, age, name, blah, 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 blah. Then there's the financial information, that middle part, and then the actual request. Okay, that's PAT. Okay, so there's a difference between the two. Okay, so credit loan application, client's request. Okay, but PAT, we're looking at customer risk, we're looking at loan pricing. Customer risk, the difference between the two. Okay. All right, let's look at purpose. P, purpose. We're still on page 36. Top of page 36. Okay, so what are some of the considerations for purpose? Okay, and purpose, top of page 36, we're talking about the use of the funds. What are the funds going to be used for? Okay, is it legal? Is it sound? Is it worthwhile? Is it legal? Is it sound? Is it worthwhile? Okay. So for individuals, they may want to purchase an asset, not speculative. So you don't want to say, listen, man, they have this pyramid scheme out now. I want to borrow $2,000 to get in this pyramid scheme. Right? Back in the day before numbers was legalized, it would have been numbers. But I still won't lend anybody to play numbers. Not speculative. It's legal. Back then it was illegal. It had 2 strikes. But it had 3 strikes. It wasn't legal, it wasn't sound, and it wasn't worthwhile. Right? And now it's legal, it's still ain't sound, it's still ain't worthwhile. Right? Go ahead. Question? Comment? No? Okay. Business, they may need it for working capital or to purchase fixed assets like plant, machinery, premises. They may want to expand, so they may want to buy another property, and also build a plant on it and purchase machinery for it. Okay. So whether it's a individual or business, is it legal, sound, worthwhile? 2, is there a reasonable purpose and term relationship? Is there a reasonable purpose term relationship? Let's do a little exercise. Let's go to page 42. Page 42, and let's do that exercise together. Okay, so I'll put it on the screen. Page 42, chapter 8. So in one column, the orange column or gold column, we have the purpose, and we have a list of purposes: wedding, home improvement, investment, auto. And then the next 2 columns, we have the financing method, mortgage, consumer. So with this, we want to determine whether we would use a mortgage to finance. We would recommend or give this client a mortgage or consumer loan. So for wedding, consumer. Sorry? None. Okay. I agree with you, but nowadays, if the people have salary deduction, we'll give it to them. I had that happen. I had it happen at a financial institution I was with. That the when the person came, and the thing about it is that they didn't take salary deduction from both persons. So and in this instance, I think it was the man who was stuck with it, right? The man was stuck with paying for the rent. Man, was he livid? You know, this gal wanted this kind of rent, and then until I wanted to buy one piece of property, and then so. But brother, you stupid, you give your Shane. She was salary deductible, but she said she could save up more money for the house. Okay, so
rather than getting a house or whatever, and then just go to the DP.
well, you have a lot of people like that. Shit. You have a lot of people like that. I know of a couple. The man wants to get married, the woman wants to get married, but because of her status in society, she wants a large wedding. Him, he's saying let's go. He's saying let's go to the JP, and then and let's go to the JP, get married, and then you know, get our place, and then after that, then we could you know, year two, then we'll have a wedding, but let's get married, combine, because you know, I guess she may have been reluctant to combine incomes to get something without them actually being married. Okay. Oh, that's
You went off, but you want to combine, you gotta bring something to do with it.
yeah.
You want $100,000, and then you even got a mortgage, and you went off.
That has gone nowhere. That has gone nowhere.
We would take everywhere.
Yeah, it has gone nowhere. Well, I shouldn't say that. It is from me outside looking in, I don't see where they are. And I've been hearing this story now for over 10 years. And I don't think I've not really seen any movement. You know, now I may be wrong. Okay. But you know, maybe she just don't want to get married, and maybe she telling him she won't get married, but maybe not married him. Well, maybe she doesn't want to get married at all. Maybe it's just a career. You know, and maybe she just wants to make sure that she have that, and when she goes to different functions, she wants to say that she has her right. So weddings, consumer. If you do give them for weddings, consumer. Okay. Home improvement. Mortgage. Okay, it depends. Okay, yes, okay. Right. Okay, so based on the amount, if the salary can handle consumer loan, give a consumer. But if it's a large project, then mortgage. Okay. Yep. Okay. So mortgage and consumer loan depending. Okay. What about investment? Okay. So someone is saying consumer, someone is saying depends. Both. Sure. Go ahead. Okay. So I would say both depends on the investment. Okay. Okay, because the investment may be significant, substantial size enough that you need to do a mortgage. Okay, so for example, it might be a condominium complex or condominium, a duplex, triplex. So those are investments. Okay, you know, once you get outside the single family, those are considered investment residential properties. Okay. So investment, again, depending on the amount, mortgage or consumer loan. What about automobile?
Consumer.
Consumer. Okay, although the price of some of these cars, I saw one Mercedes on car show, $125,000. That looked like mortgage to me. You know, I can't understand how cars got to be that price anyway. And then people make noise about the little Japanese cars on the road. That's when you're doing $125,000 car, $190,000 car. If somebody gets scratched up, anyhow, that's another story. So automobile, consumer, education, college, consumer.
Consumer.
Okay. Sometimes it may entail taking out a mortgage. It may entail taking out a mortgage. Especially depending on the amount, particularly if your child will go off to become a doctor. Yeah, okay. So it can be both. Okay. Debt consolidation,
Both.
both. I would say both, yes. Because you can get it, again, depending on the amount involved. And sometimes the debt consolidation, if they have a mortgage, and they took on some other consumer debt that caused them to get in trouble, the only thing, the most viable alternative may be to consolidate it using the real estate. So whoever holds the mortgage may take the say, okay, well, we'll take over the whole debt. Okay, so debt consolidation, yes. Medical, consumer, anyone else? Any other opinion on that? I would try to stay away from mortgaging my property for medical.
It would depend on the amount, though. You can use both.
Yeah, as a last resort, I personally I would not mortgage or take a further charge or whatever on my property for particularly if it's my primary residence for medical, particularly if it's one of those circumstances that's terminal, because even with insurances, people run up, that $1 million so quick, man. It's amazing. Like these doctors and hospitals go crazy with these fees. So I would tend to stay away. But it's possible. But I myself would not do it, and I would discourage anybody who came to me saying they wanted a mortgage for medical. Now, if there's absolutely no other alternative, as a lender, I would do an application. But particularly if that's your primary residence, your residence. Okay. Now if it's another piece of property or you have a bunch of acreage in the family island, couple acres, that's a different story. But we're talking about your residence, mortgage on your residence. The homework that was in for the night.
So when you do that, so you'll be making 2 monthly payments against the mortgage? 2 different payments?
Yes, you'll have a if you do a further charge, that'll be a separate loan payment, unless you do further charge and data variation where you merge both into one.
Further charge and
No, you can refinance. That's where a data variation would come in, where you would do further charge and data variation, right? So the variation would be that you where you add it on to it's a full lump of money, but you add it on to, you add it onto the mortgage. Right, but generally speaking, a further charge is a separate loan account that has its own interest rate. It could have a shorter term, or it could have the same. It could have the term that matures the same as the mortgage, or shorter. Okay. Or you could do a further charge to complicate things. You could do a further charge, and it could be a consumer loan. The further charge is on the real estate. You see, the further charge is on the real estate. So you're taking a further charge of real estate. So the person wants to do it for education purposes or medical purposes, whatever it is. You don't necessarily do it as a mortgage. You can do it as a consumer loan. Okay. The downside with the consumer loan is that the interest rate will be higher. Okay. So if the extent to which you can afford a short term, right? You can't afford a short term. I would do it as a mortgage because the interest rate will be lower. Okay, so the next one is business startup. Consumer from our point of view, unless of course your Bahamas Development Bank, and they would take mortgages and that sort of stuff. Shopping. Consumer. Yeah, that's shopping is like in the category of wedding. Vacation.
Consumer.
Again, that's one of those shopping wedding kind of things. School fees.
Consumer.
Okay. A house.
Mortgage.
Okay. All righty. Any questions on? Okay. Any questions on before we look at amount?
No questions.
No questions? Okay. All right, so let's look at amount. Okay. So amount is the next heading down from the top of page 36. Amount is the sum required. Okay. So here are some considerations. Is it too much or too little? Is it realistic? So when the customer is coming to you, and they're asking, that's one of the reasons why we ask. So if they're coming for a car, we want them to bring a performer invoice because we want to see what the total cost of the car is. If they come into us, they want to, build a little porch onto their house. They tell you, oh, I need 5,000. So you tell them, bring me 3 estimates. Let me look at the 3 estimates and see, and so you decide which of the 3 you're going with. And so the estimates should show. If you choose the one for 5,000, the other 2 estimates should be within that same range. So you shouldn't have the one you want is 5,000, and then the other 2, one is 9 and one is 10,000. Okay, so obviously something might be a little wrong there, right? Either somebody's undercharging, underbidding, or the other 2 are overcharging. Okay. Well, but those looking at the 3, you'll say, okay, you want to build a porch. Okay. You want to build a porch. They bring in one saying 5,000. 2 others are much higher, almost double, right? So the first question comes to your mind. See, and there's also a cost per square foot, right? In the construction industry. Okay. So if you don't have that information, a loan officer who deals with construction loans, you piggyback off them. You say, listen, this person wants to do this. Based on your knowledge of the construction industry from the loans you're doing and the appraisals that you look at, because in the appraisal, when they're doing this the square footage, they'll say like for example, they say a porch or carport, covered carport, that's XY dollars per square foot. The main building of the house will be a slightly higher cost per square foot. Okay, so based on that knowledge, then you will make a determination saying, hey, based on the industry average, 5,000 is too low, or 5,000 may be correct. The other two could be overcharging. You see, they probably well, this person don't know. I'll hit them for an extra 3,000, 10,000. I mean 5,000. So that that is why it's important to get estimates, not just for the bank, but for the person to get it for themselves, right? And so sometimes even on social media, you see people saying, how much will it cost for me to put one to put a little shack on my property, a little. So they say, well, what do you want? 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, where you building, kind of thing. So some people have been the answers, they'll come back and say, well, where you building, blah blah blah, right? Or it could be someone, I have a piece of property in I don't want to use like Zuma because Zuma, it's like Nassau kind of thing. I say Long Island, okay? I'll build a house in Long Island, okay? So people there who have knowledge of Long Island will then say, well, it costs such and such and such to do construction there. Okay. I've seen it, they talk about Illustra. Illustra has those extremes because you have a lot of people who, foreigners who build second homes. So you have contractors who will really sock it to them, right? Because they know these people got money. Okay. And if me or you want them build for us, right? We could be subject to those prices. Unless of course we know somebody. You see? Similar like with Abaco, and some extent Zuma. You have a lot of these expatriate people buying, second homes, vacation homes and whatnot. You see? And especially since Dorian, where people are rebuilding in Abaco, it's like cost of construction is like crazy, So so the second one is the fill in the blank. Is the borrower making a contribution? That shouldn't be borrowing, it should be is the borrower. I know I got borrowing in there. Is the borrower, that should be BORROWER. Is the borrower making a contribution? And this is where we ask them to put their equity stake, down payment, that sort of stuff. When it's 10%, 5%, 15%, or whatever it is, right? What contribution are they making? Is that contribution in cash? Is that contribution in stocks, shares, bonds? Is that contribution in real estate? Whatever that contribution is, are they making a contribution? Okay. Sorry, if you have. You can pledge that. If you have stock, shares, and bonds, you can pledge that. You can pledge that towards your contribution. So they would hold that. But again, the stocks and bonds, most banks tend to use about 50% of the value of stocks and bonds. Okay, so if your requirement is 6,000, you have 10,000. You have 10,000 worth of stocks and bonds. They're going to use 5,000 or 10,000, so you're still short 1,000. Okay. Now, whereas if you have 12,000, you need 6,000, and they use 50%. Then you've met the equity requirement. Okay. So, right, and then you have when it comes to individuals, apart from debt service ratios, lenders may also use a multiplier of income as a rough guide to determine the maximum that a person can borrow. So, for example, let me say you cannot borrow, or you should not borrow more than 3 times your income. Now, while that is not in the past, this was used a lot in the past, right? I'm talking about probably like 30 years, 25, 30 years ago, right? But to some extent, you still find that it's applicable when it comes to staff borrowings. Okay, so if, for example, if you work for Biff's Bank will say, you can't borrow no more than 3 times your annual salary or 4 times your annual salary, for a mortgage. Okay, so that'll be one of the considerations for borrowing a staff at the staff rate. Now, if you borrow above that amount, then it may be at the regular customer rate. Okay, so part of the staff, so as part of the staff benefits, they may say, they may have that stipulation. Okay, but it doesn't really, it really doesn't, except for people who are really doing financial planning. They may still, you may still find some financial planners who recommend that, okay, you're making $50,000 a year, right? Don't borrow more than $150,000 for home. Okay. So, and then we have business. Okay. So we probably won't, I mentioned it earlier, we won't be getting into the financial ratios when it comes to businesses in this course, but they are financial ratios, what they call liquidity ratios, leverage ratios. Leverage ratios are how much the business is in debt, etc. Right? Then they have stock, your accounts receivables, turnover ratios. They have the stock turnover ratios. So there are a number of ratios that are looked at when you're considering a business to borrow. Okay. So apart from these financial ratios, as a rough guideline, you may find some lenders, they'll say that we will lend less than the net worth of the company or the business. Okay. So to a large degree, some of that is still employed today. Again, this is one of those old things going way, way back, but that is one of those things that's still looked at in making the final determination, particularly banks who are just getting into business lending. They tend to look to see, what is the net worth of this company been, what is the average net worth? I don't want to take a chance higher than giving them more than what their net worth is, because I know that if they have to sell their assets, right? If they have to sell their assets, it'll cover this amount of liabilities. So if the difference between the assets and the liabilities is say 50,000, well, I ain't gonna lend them up to 50,000. I may lend them a portion, I may lend them 30,000, I may lend them 40,000. Bearing in mind that if they have to sell those assets, they may be under for sale, so they won't get the full value. So while the net worth is showing that they have 50,000, in a for sale or fire sale situation, they only get like 30, 35,000, 40,000 best for it. So in that instance, I ain't gonna lend them no more than between 30 and 40,000, right? So those are some of the considerations, even in today, when even after you look at all the financial ratios and whatnot, you still have lending institutions who consider the net worth of a company are not lending more than the net worth. Okay. Okay, so for amount, I don't know that there's much more that can be said about that. Are any questions, any comments or whatever on amount before we move to repayment? No? Okay. So let's move to repayment. Okay. And repayment is the repayment, or like it says on the board, repayment term. What is the repayment term? Or the payment amount? Okay, so you're looking at the term, that's the length of time for the mortgage, and you're looking at the payment amount itself. Okay, what amount the client has to pay, pay the loan back. And as we will see that there are some facilities where you that there are payment programs, and there's some where they're not. Okay, so for example, an overdraft on credit cards don't have set repayment programs. Okay, whereas mortgages and consumer loans do. Okay, but we'll see that in a minute. Okay, so the term is a term consistent with the purpose and security pledged. Okay, so remember we're doing our term and that little exercise, term and purpose. Okay, here's another element, not just the purpose, but the security. Okay, so as mentioned before, mortgages, you can do a longer term because the security is considered stronger. Because the underlying security is normally real estate. Okay, and particularly in the Bahamas, real estate, the value doesn't fluctuate as in other countries in the world, including the United States, the UK, parts of Europe, and even Canada. There was a time when, I'm trying to remember when that was. It was like the 70s, I think, late 70s, early 80s, when there was a collapse in the real estate market, and so prices of real estate were falling, and so there were some jurisdictions in the UK and the USA. They found that I may have had a property that may have been worth $500,000 or £500,000, but when the real estate market crashed, it wasn't even worth £200,000 or $200,000. Okay, and that is, you'll hear them saying that they have an underwater loan or something like that, or underwater mortgage. It means that the underlying security is, if they sell it, they won't be able to pay off the debt. Okay. What happened is in the Bahamas, there was a gentleman who owned a foreigner who owned a lot of property in one of the family islands, right? Several, but one island in particular, and he was liquidating his properties because he was anticipating the further free fall, and so a number of Bahamians took advantage of him selling his properties at low values, right? So properties are worth like $25,000 to $40,000. Between $25,000 and $40,000 was going like anywhere from like $5,000 to $15,000, right? And those properties are now back up to the values of them. The values of them are, although that was the consideration amount for being sold, those values are back up to $35,000, $40,000, $45,000. I saw one $50,000 up for sale the other day, right? So that was one of those rare cases, and that was an isolated case where the foreigner didn't understand our market. So he had properties in Canada, the Bahamas, probably Cayman, I don't know, but he had properties in Canada, the US, Canada, the US, and the Bahamas. And his properties fell like well below the market values in those countries. And so he was just liquidating his portfolio. And he did the same thing in the Bahamas without understanding our market. I've been in situations where I've dealt with a client, and the client have, say, another property somewhere else, and to buy, getting ready to sell their house, and they refuse to say sell the vacant property to get itself on the job. They said, no, I hold on to that. That's my insurance. But I can go in up in value, right? Because Bahamians, we tend to hold on to real estate. We tend, oh, they'll push it unless they absolutely have to. I found that they wouldn't. Okay. I don't really know what the mindset of that is all about, but it might be it might be tied to the fact that once upon a time Black Bahamians weren't allowed to own property. Okay. And when the old guard, the UBP government, allowed Black people to own property, it was because their hands were tied. They did it to kind of like spite. They did it like to spite Black people, because what they did was there was a time when Black Bahamians could not vote. Okay. And so the white ruling class at the time, they determined, okay, we can allow you all to vote, but we can only allow men to vote. Okay. So they can only allow Black men to vote. But you have to own property, a certain amount of property. Okay. And back in those days, very few Black men owned property, if any. Okay. So what that did is that spurred on the Black community to say, we're gonna acquire property. So if you look at some of our grandparents, great-grandparents, you'll find that they own acres, right, in Family Island or out Michael Road or somewhere in some of these areas that were kind of were desolate back then. Okay. So what they did is they worked so in the mindset was that I would, in order for me to vote, I have to own property. So I did what I had to do to get money to buy property. And then of course, then they allowed women in the Bahamas to vote. Okay. So we had at first Black people weren't allowed to vote, then it's Black male, and then they allowed women to vote. Okay. So part of it may be steeped in that. And also when the Black diaspora realized that, hey, when you really come to think of it, where did the white people make most of their money? In real estate. Okay. And when you deal with financial planners and financial wealth managers and financial planners, they will tell you that most, if not all of the millionaires made their money, right, in real estate. Now you have like the Bill Gates and them who come up, later with technology and whatever it is, right? But when you look at what's the wealthy old guy in America, who they always quote, what his name slips me out. But a lot of his money was in real estate. Former President Donald Trump, real estate. Okay. And a lot of them, what they did is they flipped a lot the real estate. The average person, we want a house and we want to hold on to that. And we want to sell that. Oh, my children born in this house, and for emotional ties, right? I had a conversation with the late Mr. Sands, one of the founders of Bahamas Bus and Truck, and also Sandpin and multi-discount, right? And he told a story that he told his wife, never get comfortable in a house, right? And he said, and his wife backed up the story. And the story she said was one afternoon he came home and he said, the house sold, packing his stuff. Okay? It was their last house before they moved on Paradise Island. It was on Eastern Road, um, high on the perch around one of those bends. And uh and she liked the house. She said, but she got accustomed to him. You know, he buy it for $350,000. He sell it for $500,000. You know, he'd do a little fix up. You know, spend a couple of dollars, fix it up, sell it. And he so even and this was he had already owned or co-owned a Bahamas bus and truck, Sandpin Motors, Elite Motors, multi discount. So he had these businesses already, and he was still doing this, right? I think they're both deceased. I don't know if his new wife, because he married he remarried a younger woman. I don't know if she sold the house on Paradise and moved to the States, or if she did the same thing, or she still lives in the place on Paradise Island. But that was the last last known place that I know that he lived when he was in the Bahamas. Right? When he was alive. Okay. And of course he probably had places in Spanish Wells and Abaco and stuff, because I think Spanish Wells was his hometown where he was born. And of course, his family has roots in Abaco. You know, them Pinder Sands and them Careys, you know, Abaco and Illustra, a lot of them descended from the loyalists. So they had common names and common ancestry, you know. So and his partner was a Pinder, Frank Pinder. Wade Sands is his first name, Wade Sands, right? Um, and he like I said, he would flip houses, and real estate is where he apart from when he started Bahamas Bus and Truck, him and Frankie, um, uh, they made their money, a lot of their money in real estate. You see, and a lot of the Mongols make them their money in real estate. Okay, like I said, with the exception of a lot of the people nowadays in Silicon Valley, you know, that's a newer generation, but by and large, your um, uh, the main source of income generation is still real estate. Look at Frankie Wilson. Okay, for better or for worse, whatever you think of him, right? He has bought property or acquired property, turned it over, sold it, and whatnot, and that's how he's generated a lot of his wealth. Okay, he was a chartered accountant, um, and the firm pushed him out, but he was working his plan, and so when he got pushed out, he was also part of the Sunshine Boys. He used his connections and started into real estate development. You see, so yeah, okay. So real estate in the Bahamas tends to be something that doesn't fluctuate. Okay, and unless people's backs are pressed against the wall, they will hold on to it. Whether it's an emotional tie, or whether it's some deep psychological tie going way back, that I gotta own a piece of the rock, and if I could lose that, I ain't gonna lose this, because I gotta own a piece of the Bahamas. This might, sorry. Well, that's what I'm saying. Unless push comes to shove and actually starts to shove, some of these people will till the 11th hour, 12th hour, they will, a minister the 12th hour, they will resist. I came across it, particularly my days in Finco. Man, it was like, listen, they say, no. That's an Eastwood. Um, you know, you could sell my house. I'll build a little shack on that in Eastwood, because that's the upper AP area or whatever it is. So, okay. So whatever was, it has something to do with a mindset, and what drove that mindset. I guess it varies from person to person. Mhm. a lot of the homes were nice. I just couldn't understand, you know. Some of it was one was a condominium complex that was 4 units, 2-story, and the person still wouldn't sell a vacant piece of property to help them out of that space. They say, I sell that, I don't have that, and then suppose things still don't turn back up in my business, and I still own then you'll still sell the four townhouses, the small townhouses. No, they still sell the townhouses, and I still ain't got none. So y'all might as well sell that, and I have some. You see, so for different reasons, people, you know, they rationalize. So, okay. Okay, so the term is it consistent with the purpose and security pledged? The actual payment amount. Okay, is it $100 a month, $125 a month? Is it $1,025 a month? The source, can you clearly identify the source of where that payment is coming from? Remember we said about, I think it was in chapter 2, about KYC. Okay. Is it coming from salaried income, rental income, business income, dividend income, etc.? We don't want it coming from a source that is illegal. You know, so I work the Ministry of Works, but I can only afford $800. Then I got a little side hustle, you know. What's a side hustle? I sell my little weed, you know. That brings an extra $3,000 a month. Right? So you don't want to do, like I said before, it was numbers. It was numbers, but now that's legalized now. So but some banks still will not accept do loans to people who work at the numbers places. So
if somebody, when they bring the receipt along with them, they go. That's what I want to say.
okay. That's selective. You get into the ethics class there, you know.
$250,000 brought the letter from them.
Interesting. Okay. And the final point with repayment term, NBB in capital letters. Okay, this is a Latin term. NB means nota buena, means note well. So if you see NBB, that means note well, right? Note very well, right? NB means note well. Note well. Or take note of this. That's what it's saying. It's an old Latin term, nota buena. Nota means note, buena, well. Spanish people get buenas noches, good morning, good. Okay. So note well, so NBB, note well. Some types of lending have disciplined repayment programs, while others do not. And the next sentence explains it. Personal loans or consumer loans, mortgage loans or real estate loans, and business loans all have repayment programs. Okay, so you can, you know, it's so much a month over so many years or so many months, blah, 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 right? Whereas overdrafts and credit cards do not have them. Okay, so you can make the minimum payment on your credit card, you can make the full payment, you know, with your overdraft, that fluctuates, you know, based on cash flows, etc. Okay. So that's the main point to remember. A very important point to remember with that. Okay. Alrighty, so let's do as much as we can with insurance. Lateral security pledged. So the first point to consider with insurance or collateral security is, does the client have title to the asset? Does he, she, or they own it? Or is it encumbered? That is it held by someone else? Okay, encumbered means, there could be a mortgage, someone else may have a mortgage over it. The government may have a lien against it for a bond in the Supreme Court or Magistrates Court. Someone may pledge their property as to get somebody out from jail. Okay. The outstanding property tax is an encumbrance. Okay. So that's why when lawyers do the title search, one of the things they have to answer the question to is whether there's any outstanding real property tax. Because real property tax, if a property is to be sold, real property tax is one of the first things to come out. Even before you, the bank, get your money back. Okay. So, right. And then of course, like I said, when they do the title search, do you own the property? Someone else may claim they own the property. When you do the title search, let me show that person actually owned the property, not you. Okay. And the property may have been sold to you, and sold to the other person after you, but their title got registered before you, and then you register your title. And in our legal framework, first in time is first in line. So what that means is, if that person registered their own before you, they first in line for ownership of that property. So you may have bought yours legitimately. Let's say you came to me and bought the property from me, right? And you did that last week. Okay, and I turn around and I sell the property to her this week. Okay, you had your property, your document in your hand from last week. She got hers this week. She registered hers, so hers getting registered before yours. So though you bought the property for her, she registered hers, so she will be shown as the owner. That's first in time, registered in time, timeline is first in line to the. Okay, so then you have to come to try to sue me. By that time, I go into some island, I let you know what island I go to. No, because I can duck you. So I got money from you, I got money from her, right? And the money I got from you, I go on to Cayman. Yes, what and title searches, you have to establish a good root of title going back a minimum of 30 years. Right, so they go back 30 years to establish a good root of title, right? With exception if the government gives you a crown grant, right? If the government gives you a crown grant, that could be yesterday. If the government gives you a crown grant yesterday, that's good. You don't have to go back 30 years because it's a government crown grant. Okay, although we're finding that some people are contesting some stuff that the government acquired and then they sold, not crown grants, sold, and so now some subdivisions and some properties are in dispute now, and so the government may have to end up chalking up some money for some stuff that's going on. So, it can take less than a week. Should take less than a week. But some lawyers, they don't get back to you for a month. They blame it on. Well, there was one time when the registry was backlogged and because what they used to do is they used to get all the documents and they used to scan the documents, but the scanning was done in Florida, I think, somewhere. And so there's this backlog, right, of scanning. So they couldn't give you title. Couldn't show you right now that this was, so there's like a backlog 6 months kind of thing, right? I think that's cleared up pretty much now, so it's not as bad as it used to. And then, of course, you have companies who have online title searches, right? There are at least 2 that I'm aware of, where they you can, if you subscribe to them, you can for a fee, you can go online and do title searches yourself. Okay. Now, what when I worked at Finco, at one time we used to subscribe, and we found it useful because if a client came to us and they wanted to borrow, they want to do a further charge, rather than them having to go through the process again, right, of getting the title search and all the legal fees. We just went on the system. Well, I mean, it was controlled, and this is through the general manager's office. So the general manager would have his administrative assistant do the search, right, and then it'll show that they don't have, you know, there are no new encumbrances on the property other than the only thing showing that encumbrances on the property is our original mortgage, right? There's no judgments against the people, no judgments against the property, no further charges to another bank, no liens placed by the Supreme Court, or any but other type of encumbrances, right? So once we see that, then we would then do the further charge without requiring, you know, them going to the lawyer and incurring legal fees and it taking longer. See? So it for us back then, you know, it was worth it. Okay. So does the client have title to the asset? Next, you want to consider the 4 qualities of good collateral security. Okay. So let's look at those 4 qualities. So the first one is easy to acquire good title. Okay. How easy is it for us as a financial institution to get good title to this? Okay. So in the case of a car, the person buying a new car, we got a performer invoice. Performer invoice will give us the all the particulars of the car, you know, 2023 Nissan, whatever it is. It'll have the serial number, which is important. Okay, so it'll have the serial number, and so when we are taking a charge or a chattel mortgage over that car, it'll be important for us to get the day, the year and the make, model, and the serial number or chassis number correct. And you can't have one of those digits or letters off or misconstrued. Okay. When you do that, when you put that in your chattel mortgage, because if you miss out one digit or one letter of that chassis number or serial number of that vehicle, or you take a 3 for 8 or whatever it is, if one of them is out of whack, you don't have a chattel mortgage over that vehicle. You can't enforce that. The courts won't allow you to enforce it. Okay, so so with a new car, it's pretty easy because we get the performer invoice. Then they also have to provide the insurance, right? They have the road traffic certificate. Okay, you know, once the funds are released, you get the road traffic certificate or copy of it. Okay, and then of course, most places will have one of their account officers go in and actually look at the car physically and check the chassis number, serial number. If it's a used car, normally CDU or CID or whatever it is, so they have to, they would do an inspection. You bring the copy, the person bring a copy of that inspection, right? So the used car, to some extent, you can pretty much tell that they have title to it or not. Real estate, not until you go through the process with the lawyer that you find out. And in any event, you don't release any money until you confirm that the title is good. Okay, stock, shares, bonds, you confirm with the central depository, what do you call it, Bahamas Securities, anyway, something BSD, whatever. You confirm with them that they have these shares in this person's name. If they have government registered stock, there's a confirmation certificate that the person gets that they have XYZ registered stock. So again, it's easy to get title to those things. Now, when it comes to things like furniture, okay, restaurant equipment, stuff that may not have serial numbers on it, is a little bit more difficult because it can be somebody else. Furniture can be somebody else. Restaurant equipment or whatever it is. Okay, so it may not be easy for us to acquire title. Easy to value is the second quality of good collateral security. You don't want anything that is to do anything that's too convoluted and stuff. Okay, so with a house, you get an appraiser. With cars, you have a brand new car, you have the performing invoice. For used car, you have your what you call it, red book, blue book values, right? For jewelry, there are a few assessors in the Bahamas. You can have someone do jewelry assessment, appraisal, and if it's substantial, chances are they have it insured, so you look and see what the insured value is. Okay, for stocks and bonds, you look at your in the financial section of the business section of the newspapers, and or on TV when they're doing the financial news, see what each stock is closed at the end of business trading day. So there are ways of finding out the value of these items that you want to hold. Okay, you want to also make sure it has stable value. So for us, again, real estate has been stable. So you could find a property is going to hold that value or appreciate in value for some time. So stocks and bonds, unlike the American market, where some of their stocks, bond shares change by the hour, by the minute. Okay, here ours very seldom change. Okay, so again, it's stable value. What else? That's pretty much it, right? And then easy to realize if necessary. Okay, easy to realize, what that means is that how easy can the bank, if we have to, get our money back? How quickly can we sell them? What mechanism or mechanisms are in place for us to get it? Okay, so for a mortgage or real estate, there are certain things that you have to do. For residential properties, you're subject to the Homeowners Protection Act if it's the person's residence, or actually put if it's the matrimonial home. Okay, so that may take a little longer than if it's a commercial property or undeveloped property. Okay, so you have to take those things into consideration. What else? Easy to realize. Yeah, so like with the car, if you have to claim the car, but you know where the person lives, you know where the person works. So so on the weekend or whatever it is, or if you know what church they go to when they're in church, like the man say, he was in church and the woman tell him, "You're gonna walk. You're gonna walk." He say, "Yeah, but I already walking. I ain't nothing wrong with that." Say, "But you can walk. You can walk." When he on the side, the car wasn't there. The bike came and claimed the car. So he understood why the prophecies mean you can walk. He had to walk home. Right? Huh? Anywhere. Um, when I was to, actually, two financial institutions, one mirrored their chattel mortgage after another. And the main one, in there, it gave them the right. Like if your car parked in the garage, gave them the right to break into your garage and take the car. To break into your house and take the furniture. Mhm. Mhm. They can come, break down your door to get there, and you sign that collateral, that chattel mortgage. Hmm? I don't know if it's been changed, but it was brought to my attention that the second of those institutions is one that I actually worked at, and that was still in the chattel mortgage up to the time just before I left.
Someone in the business and I have a shotgun, right? And I'm like, I didn't get it after, you break into my home and you'll go to take the phone. Mind you, I don't know who you are.
But it's not, even if it's there, it's advisable not to enforce that. Or try to enforce that. Because yes, it's just like even with collections.
Yeah.
In collections now, if you're going on the road to collect from an individual, the bank will send two individuals, and one of which must be a male, or they may send they may have a police officer go with them depending on who it is they go into. Okay? And it's to me, it's advisable not to go to individuals to collect as physically in these times. Okay. So blow me down and call yourself a hurricane. she going in the church, tap him on the shoulder and say she comes to collect. But she could there's a confidentiality thing, and if the person pushes it, they could say she let that officer is letting her business out on the road. So you have to be careful doing those kind of things. You see? So it's for that reason that, for example, even if you call someone, you never say, "This is Glenn Nordich from Biff's Bank," right? Because you just say, Glenn, actually to call Glenn Nordich and this number. Okay. And it isn't that you don't want them to know that you call in from the bank, although that's part of it. But leaving the name, you already letting their coworker know, right? Or the receptionist or any their coworker know that they bank, whether it's a deposit account or a loan account, right? And of course we assume the voice. So the bank calling you, it gotta be you owe something. Okay. All righty. But it could be for other reasons. They could be calling, listen, we saw a charge come up on your credit card. We called you to find out if it was you, right? Because we didn't get any notice from you that you were going to foreign, right? It could be, listen, we got a wire transfer from you from someplace away, right? We need you to come to put out a source of funds. Are you expecting money from, anywhere, right? Particularly over a certain threshold, right? It can be any, number of reasons, right? Other than loan. But we program to think negatively, so we think, oh yeah, you owe it back.
I would leave my food and he would not follow. I when I'm trying to give you your money to give him $1. And I told him, you know, I don't know. I would leave my food and he would not follow.
Yeah.
I would leave my food and he would not follow. And I told him, you know, I don't know. I would leave my food and he would not follow. I would leave my food and he would not follow. I told him, you know, I don't know. I would leave my food and he would not follow. I need to know this stuff.
Hmm. Maybe you know, maybe you owe you all back somewhere back and y'all. Hmm. Okay. Wow.
So I guess too, it's social media. People tend to feel. Like associated, like you said, something that feels like it's almost like you get put on blast. And most times, some people can use that as a helpful approach to get someone to come in.
Yes.
You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So they know, oh, yeah, fine, Tony. Everybody knew your business. So now you will come glad as well. So some people do it as a forceful approach to get you to come in.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Because that money will go to the central bank. You should tell them, listen, if you don't want it, come and sign it over to me.
I tell him, he's just thinking otherwise.
Tell them, say, man, I'm a beautiful, attractive young lady. Give it to me. After a certain point in time, after a certain point in time, it becomes the government's. Yeah.
They are 7 years in the bank, so total 7 years.
I think it's 3 and 7 or something.
No, it's not. No, it is. No. I think the time was reduced in the bank. Eh? It's still 7 years. Okay.
Then
Okay.
and it's their problem.
Well,
I thought the time was long in the central bank.
okay.
This bullet would know.
Wow, so what it goes.
Why would this bullet know?
She spoke to us about it and through the AML and compliance system.
Okay.
Yeah, but I can't remember the exact one, but I think it spent a longer time in the central bank.
Mhm. Oh, okay. You mean you mean? Oh, I thought you meant this bullet D and okay. There's a lecture.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
I mean, but they let you know that the same there. Ah, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So.
But I guess if someone doesn't know, then.
And unfortunately, a lot of people don't know. But
Lack of education.
yeah. Yeah. Would the bank send? Would the bank send out a notice to the last known address? To the individual.
Yeah, no, but if they can't contact you via email or phone, then they would send a letter in the thing. The phone.
Okay. So if you die and people have access to that letter, then they
Unless
may
there's a work for that.
they may know that they will know that you have. But some people they don't specify account numbers or whatever. They just say um any bank accounts I have in my name is to go to such and such. Some of them they don't. I know I've heard of people who have actually specified the amount. they
They passed suddenly. Yeah, they did not have, so that is stipulated. Now trying to track the money or trying to track what they would have done with the money. It's like, needed a big stop them. Because they don't know if they ever had these things established, if they never, the person never said anything to the body before, you know. So it's like they just, the person is now trying to figure out, put the pieces together, even if they have any awareness of the starting point, they don't know.
yeah,
It
because
did happen, so I realize even now, based on that situation, how important it is to stipulate specific details now.
so in some instances you may have the lawyer, for example, may write to the various financial institutions and insurance companies and say we represent the estate of such and such and such and such. And we're inquiring as to any accounts held in the name of the deceased. So that may occur, But then some lawyers may not want to do that because it may uncover some stuff they don't want to, right? For their clients, you see, although it's when the announcement is made, you know, if the person died intestate, they'll say, you know, for example, Glenn Nordich has applied for letters of administration for the estate of, you know, his mother and father, and name the names or name of one or two of the people. Or if they die with a will, the lawyer will publish in the newspaper, have them publish in newspapers. No, they will say that they represent the estate of such and such and such, right? And anyone who owes the estate or who have a claim against the estate have X amount of days to file either to pay what they owe the state or to file a claim. Okay. Yeah, yeah. If you owe this the estate, yeah, that's standard. That's standard. That's standard. A lot of people don't pay attention to the if I owe you. Okay. But the banks. Yeah. Yeah, but the thing about it is that the thing about it is that if the state know who those people are and you don't, okay, so like in the case, let me give you a personal example. My father had a business and he did a lot of accounts receivable. Okay, so a lot of people owed him money. Okay, I have all the ledgers and everything, but my father did not want to go after this people. That was his. That was his expressed will. I mean, desire. It wasn't put in the will. Right. That was his communication to me. Right. That he did not want to pursue, and of course, my mother also knew. He passed before her. He didn't want to pursue because a lot of those people were because his store was like a community grocery store, so a lot of those people became like friends and family and church members and whatever it was, right? And some of those people, they never ever paid their bills, right? And he would still, you know, they would have a monthly bill outstanding. He still would deliver the grocery or send the grocery to them, right? But I mean, we benefited from some of those individuals. You've had one or two of them where you've had one or two of them say, "Oh yeah, I remember your dad when things was tough for us," and blah 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 blah. Like, come on, Mr. Morris, you know. So in one instance, in one instance, you know, both my sister and I, 2 different times, the person had shares in the car company, and he gave us massive discounts on the car. They basically made nothing off the sale of the car, you know. And he said, so the man said, "Man, you cut into my commission, cut into my commission." The salesman, right? He said, "Oh, you don't worry about it. I can pay your commission. I can pay your commission." So he paid the man the commission. So that's how I figured that was probably the cost of the car landed is basically what he let me and my sister out. Like in 2 different instances. It was me first, and then it was my sister at the same time. Right. So like I said, and then there are other instances, you know, even our children have benefited where people say, "Well, remember who your grandfather was," blah blah. So you know, they got jobs, or they given considerations for certain things. And you know, so we benefited. My father was a kind of person. He, you know, he also had rental properties. And he never put any money in court. Okay. Only one client went to court. Right? And that's because I took him to court. Right? And I did that when my father was hospitalized. He had minor surgery. And he just couldn't get them out. He just couldn't get them out. And my daddy gave me power of attorney. Right? And so when I did it while he was in surgery and recuperating. And I waited till like the third day when he was about to come out. And I know he was strong enough. And I said, "Oh, Daddy, by the way, so and so is out." I was like, "How you managed to pull that off?" So I knew I had a dad, right? Oh, he was vexed with me. So when the power of attorney expired, he never renewed it. And my daddy lived to be 99 and a couple of months. And he, for the rest of his life, that was like another almost 25 years. He never renewed. He never gave me power of attorney. But it was, I mean, it isn't like we can use the money, but he just was one of those people. And then he didn't like all that court thing and whatnot, to him is unnecessary stress, so he chose his fights, and those are some fights that he did more. So okay, so easy to realize if necessary. Okay, let's just finish this up quickly before we that's the 4 qualities. Banks may provide unsecured lending to individuals for small amounts, but for larger loans, they may take security, real estate cash, CDs, some people call them time deposits, or TDs, or fixed deposits. So CDs, TDs, whatever you call them, stocks and shares. For sole traders, proprietors, I think we end up filling in 2 blanks, eh? Okay, for sole traders or proprietors, personal collateral security often has to be taken from the proprietor. And then the last one is for limited companies or corporations, the bank may take a debenture, which will cover all the assets of the business. The debenture is a charge document, similar to like a mortgage document or collateral. A chattel mortgage is a charge document for taking a pledge over the assets of a company or corporation. Okay. So on Thursday, we will wrap up chapter 7 and begin chapter 8. Okay. So that completes the comparing method, comparing being the canons of lending. We will look at the credit seas method. Credit seas, we'll go through that pretty quickly, and then we'll end up talking about the 3 key factors. Anyone can remember what the first 2 what I said? 2 to 3 key factors that you could, that regardless of whether you use compari or credit seas. Remember I said there's 3. In the final analysis, there's 3 out of any of these that you could use. What were the first 2? Character. Ability, yes. Okay, so character, ability, which are the first two in compari. And can anyone, or does anyone know what the third one is? From your reading or otherwise? Collateral. That's your go-to. That's if all else fails. Okay, so the first 2 and the last one in compari is the one that are the 3 from compari. So character, ability, insurance. Okay, character, because the person's willingness to pay. Because if they ain't willing, okay, you can get paid, right? Now we may remedy that because salary deduction, okay. But if they ain't willing to pay, character flaw. Ability, only cash pay loans. If they ain't got the ability, generally speaking, don't look at it, okay? And insurance or collateral, as we'll see, collateral, security and credit Cs, that's our fallback. You know, what if? That's our backup plan, so to speak, okay? So those three are the three main ones. And if you get those three right, you assess those three right, you can still do a good loan without all the other stuff, comparing passes, papers, credit Cs, whatever method of assessment, right? Again, it's like losing weight, 10 or 12 ways of, step plans for losing, 2 or 3, right? Exercise, step up your exercise, reduce your intake of carbs, right? What else? So eat less, watch what you eat, exercise. Okay, so good night, folks. Thank you for those who are on Zoom. Okay. I have, for those who are here, I have your papers. Those who are not here tonight, but will be here Thursday, you can collect yours on Thursday. Okay. So good night, everyone. Oh, I will be sending the like I said, the mock interim exam, which will be patterned after a midterm exam, and which also the final exam is actually it is an actual midterm exam that I'll be sending for homework. Most of it you'll be able to do. The rest of it, once we finish the class on Thursday, once we finish chapter 7, you'll be able to do the rest of the questions on it. So I would get a jump start on it because there is a net worth statement and a TDSR spreadsheet. That's the main one. So whatever you could do in the true and false, fill in the blank, what do you call it, multiple choice, whichever ones that you could do in those, complete it to the best of your ability. I would recommend that you try doing the questions without looking for the answers in your book, just to see yourself, okay, your knowledge, because I find that when you get something wrong, when that come up again, you ain't forget that, okay? So if you get it wrong during your first going off, the one that you submit for grading, make sure you get the answers right. But what I'm saying is, as part of your what you call it, preparation for the final exam, try to do as many of the questions, even the end of chapter questions, without looking at the answers in the first instance. Okay, so I'll send that tonight along with the PowerPoint presentation for tonight. You'll get that tonight after class. Okay. Are there any questions? No? Okay, well, everyone have a good night.
Good
Good
night.
night. Good night.